It is Monday. Yeah. Cold Monday, 19th of May, just after 6 a.m. Good morning to you, and I hope your day's off to an awesome start. We have today in the studio with me an old friend of the show and somebody who's been on here. He says it was like more than a year ago, but I don't know. It feels to me like it was just the other day. We were talking about how memory is just absolute bullshit. You get those people who they say I have a great memory, right? And they can recall any number of facts they think about an event that happened or whatever else. And actually, I listened to a podcast about this just the other day. Memory is bullshit. Like everybody who thinks they've got a good memory, and people know this in court, it all turns to mush after a while. So you think, oh, I remember the exact events of this day and where I was and what I was doing. You probably don't. You've probably made a lot of it up. But I do remember the last time Jack Devnarain was here with us, so it's nice to see you again.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I saw a clip of you the other day on some show talking about all these great legendary actors.
Yeah.
And all of them died in poverty. And you were saying this keeps happening. And I remember, listen, you've been almost like a one-man activation campaign strategy.
Feels like it, yeah.
No, I know, and it must be exhausting for you because there aren't a lot of people who are brave enough, or perhaps who have the share of voice and are able to command and sensibly arrange an argument for actors.
Yeah.
Because even though they're really good at reading scripts, at pretending, at memorizing lines, at putting on a good show, a lot of these actors in real life don't have the confidence to do what you do. So you're fighting for them. How's that fight going?
It's an ongoing fight, and it feels honestly like we are climbing this massive sand dune, and every 3 steps you take up, you end up getting pulled 2 steps back. Because in order for my fight to really work, I need to mobilize large groups of actors who are prepared to stand up.
What are they? Are they also easy to mobilize or not?
No, not. And for several reasons, one of which is, we can't be victim blamed for this. It's like, well, it's tough to mobilize freelancers.
Yeah.
And that isn't our fault. You can get.
I don't want to interrupt you, so finish that thought. But
It's as freelancers, we are kept as separate, isolated, individual, distinct entities in our own right. So with that, it means we actually can't get people sitting together at the same lunchroom at the same time to get them all pulling behind one thing. And that's part of what we are trying to establish.
Well, isn't it also true that the actors who are getting the work, they don't want to rock the boat?
Absolutely.
Because they realize they've got a meal ticket here.
Yeah.
And they'd like that to last as long as possible. The last thing they want to do is kick up a fuss and join some kind of a protest or get around the table with a bunch of actors who don't have work, because then you could be jeopardizing your own opportunities. And
That's why we say,
And the actors who don't have work, they don't have any power.
Yeah.
So they'll all just sit and natter to each other for hours, but that doesn't necessarily go anywhere, right?
No, and then the famous ones will be silent up until the point they lose the sweet gig. And then it's like, oh, I can't believe this. And what do we do?
Disaster.
Somebody needs to do something,
And also they're all histrionic and dramatic. And
Yeah. Which, no, that's a huge part of it.
No,
Because,
they're emotional people.
they use emotion as a language.
Sure.
Yeah, that's part of the
in
trade.
their skill set. Sure.
Correct. So the point about why are we not organized enough? Several things, like you say, fear, right? You don't want to lose the gig, so you don't want to talk too loudly. Second thing is, by nature, we aren't easily mobilized into a large collective. And all of that put together means it's very difficult to get people behind the same message at the same time.
Who are your adversaries in this battle? Let's not say enemies, because they're not enemies. They probably have to work with you very often. But who are the people on the other side of this who are making your lives difficult, who you just wish you could get around the table to talk to you?
The people who refuse to even get on the other side of the table, think of it in terms of a traditional employer-employee format. Think of it as we are the workers, the working class.
Right.
Gareth, imagine that. And then on the other side of it, That's us. On the other side, you'd have the employers,
Yeah.
and in our world, it would be producers and broadcasters.
Okay.
So while the
And
South African...
are they schneeing you? Is that the basic? Like, is that the angle, the gist of the disagreement?
Yeah, they are. But
They're ripping you off.
They're also blocking the discussion. So they are. They have to maximize profit, right? That's the basis of any successful business. But in the world, in the creative sector globally, you have the working group, which are the actors and the writers and everybody else, and then you have the producers and the broadcasters, and they do sit across a negotiating table from each other, and that's normal.
I don't have a dog in this fight. I've got friends who are producers and friends who are actors, and
Yeah.
I know people. I've worked with people over the years who are broadcasters and all the other things as well. But it strikes me as a particularly difficult and odious task. And I mean, again, you know, you and I have spoken to each other a couple of times, and I just like what you do, and I think you're fearless. And you've also had your say politically,
Yes.
which
Still
can't
do.
have done you any favors, because
No.
people are nervous. You know, they want to be able to project whatever they're thinking onto you as an actor or
Yeah.
onto you as a personality. And when you start mouthing off and having opinions, oh, he's very dangerous, this Jack Devnarain. But it does strike me as odd that, you know, at this time there's this confluence of problems. I mean, the broadcasters have a very difficult job at the moment, and none of them are making money.
Yeah.
I know, and you know, that DSTV are struggling.
Yeah.
They're just not commissioning a lot of stuff. You know, the likes
Yeah.
of Netflix and so many other services have just pulled the rug out from under them. Plus, people aren't watching scheduled television. And for a long time, advertising around scheduled television was the lifeblood
Yeah.
of broadcasters. They could charge a lot of money to clients, advertisers, agencies for showing a commercial where they had millions of viewers, or where they thought they had millions of viewers. And usually they could measure those results either in sales or in brand awareness or in surveys or in RAMs and amps and all of those things that they used to do. And now, of course, I mean, the only people who are watching scheduled television are very, very old people and people who don't have an option.
Sure.
Like they can't afford any of the on-demand content. So the screen has disappeared, the TV screen, that is, as the primary interface between people and content. And now you've got a whole lot of some very talented and some completely untalented people on any number of devices doing through the means of YouTube or social media or shorts or TikTok or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
They're doing stuff which is garnering far more attention. So it's very difficult. How do you win this? The old model is shattered and it's never going to come back.
Yeah, it's done.
So the idea of making big TV series and movies, and I just think it's becoming it's a winnowing race down to, you know, it's going to be like one Marvel movie a year, God help us, and soap operas that are extremely cheap to make, where everything is done on one set with the same furniture, just rearranged for different rooms.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of where we're headed, right?
Yeah.
Depressing for people like the content creators, the producers, the actors, the broadcasters. That's depressing for them because they used to be these juggernauts.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a time where if the SABC or Mnet commissioned something, it was like, this is big money.
Yeah.
There are millions of rands involved. There are, you know, the people, the number of people required to put a production like that together was sometimes hundreds of people. The actors were paid properly.
There was a marketing
those glory
machine
days,
behind that.
Those glory days of TV certainly are done.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah. And in fact, it was in those years that I became a household name back then.
Yeah.
It's just that the nature of the household has changed around TV because in those years at 6:30, you know you're going to sit with the family and watch your favorite show. And you knew exactly what the show was and you knew where you were in the series. And the nature of that has changed. So it's, in many ways, the fabric of family entertainment has changed. Appointment viewing, as you describe, all that's changed. And it's a necessary part of the evolution of technology and entertainment.
Yeah.
So I don't mourn that. That's just how things play out. It's just I've got to try and make sure that in that evolution, the actor doesn't lose their status or doesn't lose the protections that they should have, that those actors around the world already have, that South Africa is avoiding the discussion.
Do you remember when that Screen Actors Guild protest happened?
Yeah.
This is long before COVID. This is probably about 2012, 13, somewhere around there. When they were all out in the street, the writers' strike also.
Yeah. No, that was just 3 years ago.
No. But there was one a long time ago, which was the first major one.
Right, yeah.
And I remember all the broadcasters did is they just hired new writers. They used different actors. They basically just punished these guys. They just didn't care. They didn't come to the party at all.
Yeah.
And so there were obviously some very unhappy people in all of that. But I think that the money talks. And sadly in South Africa, there are no unions, right, for actors.
Well, that's the point. We can't unionize.
Why is that? Because we're such a pro-labor country, right?
Completely.
I mean, this is the one country in the world that you just can't fire anyone. If you've had them working for you for 3 months, they're considered a permanent employee.
Yeah.
And yet actors can just be thrown to the curbside like, a hooker you used the night before.
Interesting reference, but I understand.
But you understand why the reference. It's not entirely me being facetious. It's also because actors throughout history were sometimes they were these less than, sex worker street people.
Oh no,
and then sometimes they were like Hollywood elites.
We still call that. We still call it, and actors themselves we'll call ourselves prostitutes because by the nature of the freelance world, you're supposed to have multiple contracting partners.
Yeah.
So, no, I get it. I would just like to tease you. So.
No. And by the way, I didn't bring you here so we could just talk about actors and the work you're doing. I just think it's really good work. And,
oh, no, I appreciate it.
You're a brave guy to take on some of these entities and these big companies and, to stand up for the little guy.
Well, that's the thing. And I have a fear that because if we are failing to regulate the industry now, we are leaving ourselves very few options for creating, nurturing talent in generations to come. We need more Gareth Cliffs of the world. We need more Jack Devnarains of the world. And we have a role to play in making sure that there is that succession. So we have to help develop talent.
I think it's going to happen anyway. I don't think we need to worry about that. I mean, I just mentioned YouTube and TikTok. And I know that some of it is, we might, maybe you and I are too old now, and we might just say a lot of that stuff is crappy quality. And it's not, it's not adding value to the world. But I sometimes think that the overproduced stuff that looks like it's just too shiny, it's just too well put together, sometimes that puts people off too. I happen to like it. I mean, I love nothing more than a beautiful historical drama that is, only 2 hours or less long, that is just perfectly edited. The scripting is beautiful. The acting is superb. Everything about it is just convincing.
Yeah.
But there are people who like things to be messy. And there was this show that they've just done, Adulting. Is it Adulting? What's the one in the UK where the guy he uses one camera. Adolescence, that's it. He uses one camera to film the entire thing in like one take.
Yeah.
And I can't even bring myself to watch it. I just know it's going to make me nauseous.
Yeah.
Right? It's a huge success, runaway success, so who knows?
Yeah, well, that's, again, part of the evolution of
But why do you feel like we have to develop talent? Shouldn't they just do it themselves? Who developed you? And by the way, there's some people here saying how much they love you.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you, guys.
Sanele says, I remember him from Generations with Sean. Someone else saying, pay your TV license, because I stupidly did mine. Is Gareth wearing a Facebook sweater? Yeah, I bought this in, what's the place called? Palo Alto. In what, 2016 or something when I went there. They've also ruined television. And,
well, they've created a new version of something.
Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. Now, I mean, people are so busy with their phones. I'm surprised they even have time. I've got one TV in my house. I always talk about this. The audience is probably bored of it. One TV in my house. It's hardly ever on because I don't watch sport. And sports what's kept television alive in this country,
Yeah.
let's be fair. And soap operas,
Yeah.
because they're hugely popular, even
And
to this day.
Loyal audiences.
Loyal audiences. You see, the biggest shows in South Africa have always consistently been soap operas.
Yeah.
And it's not the news. No one watches that anymore.
News doesn't make money for any channel.
No. And yet, I know you also talk about journalists a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, those are few and far between. And I was talking to someone the other day, and I said to them, well, journalists is just mostly drunk people who now use ChatGPT to help them write articles. That's what
Has
a
it
journalist
come to
is.
that, really? I
It's
was
kind
hoping
of
not.
it's kind of like that.
Okay.
What's AI doing in the acting world?
It's terrifying because for us, it genuinely can replace actors, not just, they can replace actors in two ways. The one way is where you can replicate an actor, so a well-known
deep
actor.
fakes.
Deepfakes. And the other way is where you can completely create a being that doesn't exist in the real world
Yeah.
and make them exist just as an audio-visual person. So we are worried about it because, you referenced the strike earlier. In a unionized environment, you can say, whoa, guys, this is a problem. Let's negotiate how you're going to compensate me for the use of my image.
Yeah.
Let's negotiate how you're going to ask me for my permission to use my image. In an unregulated industry like South Africa, this is a huge concern. No regulation means that people are going to just use your image and never have to ask you or pay you.
And I mean, in the world of AI, they can just find a couple of reference images of you
Yeah.
online and generate an AI version
That's right.
of you.
That's my
in
big
3D.
concern.
No, I'm not concerned about that. I can't wait.
What?
Then I don't have to be there myself. I can just switch it on and there's a show.
But don't you want to be paid?
Yeah, well, by then I'll have to have found other ways of making money. No, seriously, because I think there are things that people are just not prepared to pay for. I mean, here's an important example. Someone says here, Netflix is cheap compared to DSTV.
Yeah.
And maybe that's it. You can have Apple TV, Netflix, Amazon, Showmax, and all together still be cheaper than DSTV. That's from Lee.
Yeah.
Congo and Seven Alarm was Igoli, they say, was the best show, by the way. There are lots of people here saying, did you see Law and Crime created an AI-generated opening statement at the Diddy trial? Well, I haven't seen that, but I'm not surprised.
No, exactly. Yeah.
That's what happens when a country pays their TV license. Okay, guys, just enough. I get it. It's funny, and I love it too. It's hilarious. But if this is the only stuff, then I'm not going to read the comments. The problem is that acting and entertainment is a monopsony. That's the opposite of monopoly, in which there are many service providers and effectively only one consumer, which is often the broadcaster. I mean, that could be true, but I think that we've also got to expand this to the internet. We're all just content creators.
Yeah.
All of us. It used to be actors, writers, musicians, programmers, engineers. All these different monikers and what they mean.
Yeah.
But now we're all just content creators. It's
That's
a big
right.
barrel of fish.
And even in the same way we describe those content creators globally, they still fit within a certain regulated space as workers internationally. So they would still have the right to join a union. They would still have the right to engage in a fair negotiation for this is what my cost per minute is, or whatever it is.
So if someone was like Harvey Weinstein in South Africa, there's no recourse.
Yeah, no recourse.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that should worry everybody.
Yeah, it should.
That
It should.
there would be some creepy guy who could take advantage of all the pretty young actresses, and there's nothing they can do.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, they started a cancellation campaign on social media.
Yeah, and that's, again, it doesn't have to come to that. It shouldn't have to come to that. So for a good example is, let's just say that Weinstein character wants to cast a young woman in a certain role, and he makes her the offer, he propositions her.
Sure.
And let's just say she follows through, and a terrible incident happens. She's now been violated, and she doesn't get the role. Where does she stand? Because
It's her word versus everyone else's.
and there's no contract anyway, so there's no legal relationship that exists between them. So
And actors, do they just sign whatever's put in front of them?
yes, absolutely.
Because, I mean, you can't hire a lawyer every time.
No, you can't.
And if you're not earning thousands and thousands of rands, then a lawyer is an expensive and unnecessary luxury for some of these people. So they sign it, and then there's some clause in there that because they're not versed in the law, not because they're stupid, all of us have looked at contracts and missed things. I looked at one just yesterday with my business partner over some stuff that we're doing, and I completely missed the whole section on jurisdiction because I said in my comments, I was like, oh, we need to mention that this is the governing law in this case is the Republic of South Africa.
Yeah.
He sent me a screenshot. It was right there the whole time. I just went right past it.
Sure.
And I was looking at this, as a part of my business.
Yeah.
So I imagine for an actor, you'll get a contract, and in there it says, the producer can terminate this on a whim, or that we will only pay you half the money if you are sick one of these days, or something like that.
We're getting contracts
terrible
that force you to sign over your rights to your own image over to the producer for the producer's commercial benefit exclusively in perpetuity, and you never have any recourse. You also have that contract that will say
that is mad.
You are not protected. You may not belong to an actors guild or union, and if we want to renew this contract, we'll do it for you. That's literally what you're getting.
That's outrageous, actually,
and unenforceable.
Judas says that reality shows are overrated now too. The drama and setups are so bad. The acting is terrible and immature, very repetitive, same shows, different locations, groups, e.g. the Mommy Club. Well, if I have to see another Real Housewives version, I think I'm going to throw up into my hands. And I don't even, as I said, watch TV. But the shit comes up on my feed sometimes, and I'm like, how many of these, does each city have a group of housewives that need to be made famous?
And that was TV's way of getting around the unions.
Because you're not hiring actors, you're hiring shitty amateurs.
Absolutely.
And these people really are bad at it. Judas is not wrong. Those people are so bad at it. You can tell immediately it's all fake. And for anybody who still thinks, I mean, you remember WWE, the World Wrestling thing that they used to do with, these guys who would like SmackDown and all these shows that they'd put, where it was clear that this was choreographed, but it was choreographed reasonably well. So the untrained eye might have gone, that looks real. He's really hitting him hard.
Yeah.
But eventually, even the dumbest people caught on that this was all made up. With most of these reality shows, you don't even need to be intelligent to figure out that they're all, amateurs. It's scripted. None of it is real. We could tell. I think years ago with things like the Osbournes, certainly the Kardashians, and all these, and those are fairly smart people who've mostly been trained in the world of entertainment, so they were better at it. But you can tell like that cup of coffee scene in the kitchen in the morning where the whole family are talking is totally rehearsed.
Yeah. There's a director. They've planned out, how they want to use their set, and what's going to be more interesting, or how. What's the best way to create a conflict that's going to get viewers
There's a made-up fight. It's like, how could you say that about my outfit?
Oh,
I didn't like your outfit. But I think I look very nice. Wah! Oh, don't cry. Runs down the passage. Please don't. Do me a favor. It's so shit. So here's some other comments that I just want to get to. I only watch YouTube on my TV, says Common Sense. Actors will have to learn to car guard like the rest of us, says Cloud Sounds.
Oh, I had a wonderful...
that is mean.
I've got a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And I obviously put in all my experience, qualifications, awards, certificates, and that sort of thing. And LinkedIn came back with 2 suggestions.
Yeah.
Men's room attendant. Yeah. And it was... The person that greets you at the front of a hotel, what do you call it?
Oh, the concierge, or the doorman.
Those were the 2 suggestions LinkedIn gave me.
Wow. And of course, we know in places like LA where there are lots and lots of people who want to be famous actors. I mean, all actors want to be famous actors.
Yeah.
Because what's the point? You could charge more money.
Yes, exactly.
And,
it's leverage.
I think for a lot of people, the real motivation isn't money. It's fame.
Well, that's why you have those reality show stars. You know, they don't need to have a skill. They don't need to work on a craft.
Oh,
But they soak up the fame, and that's what they're there for.
that's it. That's their Achilles heel.
Yeah.
St. Thomas Aquinas. I tried to discuss this the other day on the show, and I forgot the fourth one. St. Thomas Aquinas said there are 4 motivations that can lead people into dark places, and we all have a combination of them or one. Now, some people it's clear.
Yeah.
So that the 4 things are power, fame, money, and reputation. Or is that fame? Hang on. I'm going to fuck this up again. Power. Pleasure. Power, pleasure, money, fame. Those are the 4 things. So you got to look at that. And I advise anyone who's watching or listening to us this morning, figure out which one yours is, because all of your bad decisions will come as a result of one of those 4. Or perhaps 2 or 3. You might have all 4. And I always thought mine was power. I don't think it is, hey?
Ah.
I think mine is probably money and or pleasure. And pleasure can mean enjoyment, adventure. It doesn't have to mean sex and drugs and all those things that are clearly vices that people deal with. But he said that one of those 4, if not a combination of 2 or more, those you can find that at the core of everyone's downfall. It's one of those prime motivations. So I think there's some homework for everybody to do to try and figure out which ones.
So, but you're saying that it's a driving force for all the things that you pursue, right?
And for good things. So it's not to say, and by the way, that there isn't one of those 4 that's better than any of the others. I mean, people who are driven by money only, people who are driven by fame, you can see that it can get you to do extraordinary things.
Yeah.
And some people will sacrifice all that they have in the pursuit of that one thing that they're after. And sometimes it's tremendous what they achieve.
Right.
But they can also come a cropper pretty horribly if you are too focused on that. So I wonder, I mean, I often think, now that I've thought now that I've heard of this theory of Aquinas's, I meet people now and I try to figure out, that person is definitely motivated by power.
And I've seen people pursue the fame in order to achieve something from the fame. So they'll start with the fame and then move on to the power, because now they're hanging with different people.
Well, I've met lots of very, very rich people who secretly want to be well known.
Yeah.
They have more money than any human being needs in their life.
Yeah.
Right. And seriously, some of these people they never think about the price of anything.
Yeah.
And I'm even if it's yachts and planes, but deep down inside, the dirty little secret is they wish they had a bit of fame. They want people to know who they are.
Now you're talking about TV commissioning editors.
Is that them?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, really?
They hate the fact that they have so much of power, but nobody knows they have the power.
Oh,
So
right.
they usually try and inflict that power on actors and manipulate them, and then they'll walk in and say, well, it was my decision to have you here.
All right.
You know,
So it becomes a big
it's quite pathetic to watch them operate, because
love me.
Yeah, they work behind the scenes. They have a lot of power, but by far, the actors who have no power have all the fame.
But do those commissioning editors still have power? Because now they don't have any money to commission things.
Now they
Pretty
still
much
do.
the only channel that is regularly commissioning stuff is like CakeNet, right? Because I don't see a lot of new productions, and again, I'm not the right person to ask, but I don't hear. I always used to say that there were 4 ways you could measure. 4 seems to be a number this morning. 4 ways you could measure the success of, for example, my radio show in the old days, or a TV show I was on.
Yeah.
So you got your audience ratings, which I don't know. I don't know how that works in an age where everything else is measured to the view,
Yeah.
to the like, to the subscription.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I know exactly how many people are watching us right now. I also know how many people subscribe to the channel. I know how many what their average duration of time spent listening is. All of that information at the touch of a button. in the old days of TV and radio, it was much more complicated. It goes back, in fact, I think they still do this, to guys with clipboards giving you a paper thing to fill out.
Yeah.
Whether you've watched this show in the last 6 weeks. I mean, it's ridiculous. Anyways,
Surveys,
there's audience ratings. Then there's, are you being talked about on the street? Is there a general, did you hear what was said this morning on this show? You know, which is hard to measure, but it is an indication that a show is starting to break through the noise and the clutter. And that's harder than ever now. But there's still, you know, if someone interviews somebody and there's a huge uproar about it, maybe it's controversial, maybe it's hilarious, whatever it might be, they're talking about it. So it's those two. Trending, exactly. Those two. Then the third one is if other media start retelling the story. So if, you know, in the old days you did a radio interview and it ended up in the newspapers or it ended up on TV or so, then you knew you were making a big difference.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one was that people were actually interacting with you. So they were messaging you like we do live messages during the show this morning, or they would send you emails, in the old days, actual letters. So those are the four ways I measured
Fan
things.
mail.
So I don't know. Are there shows being commissioned that I'm unaware of that are tremendously breakout successful at the moment?
Yeah, the commissioning is still happening. So the broadcasters still have to apply themselves to winning new audiences, getting new subscribers, whether it's things like Showmax and stuff like that. So they know that they are in a fight for their lives. And the only way they can stay in the fight is if they are commissioning new stuff. So Mzansi Magic.
Pressure.
It's on.
Mzansi Magic, they're still commissioning lots of stuff.
Yeah. And thank goodness, because I think that's the only lifeblood of the industry right now.
So here it says Dirk, hang on, Congo Chris, the most common misconception of Stoicism people make is about the denial of vices. Stoicism is the active awareness and moderation of vices, not outright denial. Have you thought about what your one of the four might be?
I'm still mulling this over.
Okay, well, don't hurt
First, I have to interrogate
yourself.
St. Thomas Aquinas. I need to know what was driving him before he came up with that.
Well, he's the one who, I don't want to get him mixed up with St. Francis of Assisi, who was the one who went off into the wilderness and spoke to the birds. I must dig up my history here and make sure that I'm right about it being Aquinas, but I'm fairly sure it is. It's not just the terabytes of content we go through every day, but the analysis required to understand how content performs. It's all crazy. Yeah, we do a live show here, and I was talking to Jack about this before we started the show this morning, and he's like, why would you put yourself through the pain? You didn't say it like that, but why would we get up and do this, early in the morning? And I said to him, there is an advantage, and I get the feeling, I see the comment section sometimes awake before we start the show, like a couple of minutes before, people are running around, getting their coffee, starting their day.
That's incredible.
No, it's amazing.
Full marks.
I think there's something really great about starting your day with some effort, with almost getting the hard stuff done first before everyone else is even awake. And for me, this show is a place where the audience and I and whoever joins in, people who might never have heard of the show before, we can all get together, talk some shit, not take each other too seriously. Have some fun, get going before everybody else, learn a little bit. Hopefully there'll be all the information that you need just so that you are not ignorant as you hit the world, and so that everything's fine. Because that's a big part of it, hey? Everything's fine. Yeah, but people, there seems to be, certainly in my experience, recently there seems to be a lot of negativity, and I'm talking very generally here about, the way people feel about the economy, the country, the world, politicians, all of the stuff that you can't really do much about in your own life. So it's so important to have the things that you can do something about brought closer to your control, and talk to other people who have control of their lives, because otherwise it does feel like, oh my God, everything just happens to me, as opposed to I actually have a role to play.
Well, you want a handle on things at least. You just want to have like, okay, what opinion could I hold on this, even if I'm not invested in it?
So let me ask you then, because you started venturing into the world of political commentary. I became very aware of your commentary during COVID because I thought that you were saying some brave and outspoken things. And at that stage, there were very few people who were brave and outspoken, certainly in person, and people who didn't have anonymous accounts.
Right.
And it was unpopular as hell. You know, we forget so quickly. We were talking about memory earlier, but we forget it almost immediately how draconian so much of what was going on in 2020 was. You couldn't do this, you can't go there, you can't be here after this time at night. I mean, we were basically like Mussolini's Italy. Or, you know, it was outrageous that liberal governments all over the world, liberal in inverted commas, governments all over the world, had decided they were going to tell people exactly what they could and couldn't do, where they could go, how much, when, where, why, what, and what for. And I just admired people who didn't take that shit. Who said, I'm not putting up with this. You go to hell.
It was disturbing to me, though, and this is now, talking about that time, that what the science was, how the science was being presented to us, and then the conditions of the lockdown were not in sync.
No.
So you needed to be in outdoor open spaces with good ventilation was an important point to be made. But you couldn't stand on the beach. You were going to be locked up if you were found on the beach. I didn't understand how that was.
That's stupid, right?
Why were the regulations not talking to each other? And what it took me to was that, to a large extent, we are being led by some super unsophisticated thinkers, which was disturbing to me.
They're not even thinkers.
Right.
I mean, we've got this delegation going to the headmaster's office in Washington this week. You know, Cyril's going with, I think, 4 ministers. Let me just find that article quickly so I can actually provide some useful information to people who want to know. So
the minister from the presidency.
Yeah,
you got
Cyril's
John
going with... and by the way, it says in the article that I'm reading here, I think it's from News 24, he's going to address President Donald Trump's false claims of genocide and discrimination against white Afrikaners in South Africa.
Yeah.
The visit, which includes a meeting at the White House, aims to reset diplomatic ties and develop a new trade framework. So apparently he's taking along 4 ministers.
Ntshavheni,
Steenhuisen. I'll tell you who, because someone I know was on the plane last night. And they let me know. So let's take a look here, because this is quite cool. Okay, so here's who we've got, and it's far more than 4 ministers. Says Ronald Lamola, who's the Minister, I think, of Justice.
Right, okay.
Is he still Justice? Who knows? They just swapped them. Kumbutso Ntshavheni, who, by the way, was like, we're not going to let Donald Trump tell us what to do. You know, it's not like you're in a position. You're not equal. People seem to have this bizarre idea that when Burkina Faso stands up at the UN, everybody listens as intently as when the US stands up and talks. If the US don't come to the G20, which they're threatening to do, the famous summit that they're going to have in Durban, which our government is super excited about, then the G20 doesn't count. When you don't have the world's most important superpower there, it's nothing. You may as well, it's like if your star player isn't on the team, if your lead actor isn't in the movie, no one watches the fucking movie. So that's what these guys are going to realize. Zane Dangor, KBC Jonas, Vincent Gwenya, Sputla Ramakgopa, Kanya Jele, John Steenhuisen. So, exciting group of people that. A real dream team. Anyway, the reason we got onto that was we were talking about how unsophisticated politicians in this country are. And across the board. I mean, none of these people, including John, who people will say, oh, well, he's DA and therefore it's different. These are not sophisticated people. And
I
they're
think
not
Zane
big
Dangor
thinkers.
is.
You think Zane Dangor is?
Yeah, I think he's got it. And I think he carries an integrity about him, and his dealings.
Remind me what he did before this.
I don't think he was a minister. He wasn't a minister before this.
Okay.
Now, in terms of diplomatic relations, I think he's got the chops for that.
Really?
Yeah, I think he does. So again, but going back to the false bravado you mentioned earlier, that's the part I think we should be really careful about, because if you're going to be in the White House facing off against Trump and Vance, I think you've got to be exceptionally careful about the argument that you present, because Trump is not somebody who responds to rational thinking or a logical argument. He doesn't respond to data. He can create a narrative in his mind.
Yeah, but also what these guys don't realize is he's got this massive machine that gives him all this information. The U.S. intelligence services, they have more money and funding and research and people than some countries' entire GDP.
Yeah.
And he can access, and I'm sure that there are NSA backdoors in all of our devices. So, these guys are going over there and they're like, this is our narrative, this is how we're going to approach it. Meanwhile, Donald's looking at the actual messages to each other from like 3 months ago.
Donald's not looking at anything, though.
Someone is. Someone's giving him an
Right.
executive briefing. And he's got people like Marco Rubio, who is very smart, sitting there with him. I'm not saying Donald Trump isn't smart, because he's got a feeling for things, which very few people have. I mean, what he's just pulled off in the Middle East is like a bromance charm tour with, Mohammed bin Salman, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a massive win for America. He's just recognized the new Syrian government, which has never happened. That the U.S. government would suddenly pay attention to and recognize because they are new. Remember, they've just overthrown Omar al-Bashir. A lot of this stuff is, it's unheard of up to now. And he walks in there, we want $1 trillion, and they give him a fucking $1 trillion arms deal.
Yeah.
He's a wheeler dealer, and he's using trade to get what he wants, because he realizes money talks for everybody in the world. Doesn't matter what your ideology, your culture, and he said something very interesting in Saudi Arabia too. He said, America's often come into places like the Middle East without understanding the culture, and we thought we can just impose our values on you. Now that's a big thing that's a smart thing for an American president to say. Because so far it's all been about exporting democracy, and we're just going to impose these, because everybody wants that. That's what George W. Bush told us, remember? They just want a little more democracy.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't. And you're talking to a lot of these leaders who are kings and emirs, and there are systems there that don't necessarily fit in with like Western European ideals.
Well, that's right. Well,
No, that's smart. I mean, Obama wasn't doing that. Bush wasn't doing that. So if Trump is the first one to do it, thank God someone's paying attention.
I don't think he understands what he said, though, because you try and
Don't you?
normalize. No, I don't think so. I think he's being played.
By who? Who's playing Trump?
Well, the Saudis have done a fantastic job.
I would agree with you if you said the Qataris with this jet.
Qatar,
Sure, so they've given him a free jet. I think that's dodgy.
because it's not free.
Of course it's not free.
Yeah. So
And the requirement on the other side will be Iran. Can you help our friends in
Yeah.
Iran? Will you talk to them? They're desperate to pursue this nuclear
that's right.
technology, which they say is not for weapons. No, it's not for weapons. Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
it's
believe the
so much
Iranians.
more also, because remember, the weaponization of the dollar has created massive economic rifts and separated economic blocks.
Sure.
So when Trump talks about who are these people in BRICS, they must stand for Spain. Yeah, no, we got to be careful of that. That's a load of nonsense that is part of why the world is
How
reacting
would
to
you
the weaponization.
approach this situation? By the way, Zain Dangor is the Director General in the Department of
Oh, it's DG,
International
right?
Relations.
Oh, okay,
right.
great.
How would you approach this meeting with Trump? I'm not just talking about the Afrikaner refugees thing, which, again, I have to just put in context for people. It's like it's 50 people. If we were suddenly seeing an outflow of hundreds of thousands of people, then I would say, oh my God, something's got to be done. This is like one plane. That's all we've got so far. There may be others, but I don't think it's going to be a ton of people, because there aren't that many people who feel that strongly about it.
It's not about the people, though. It's about the context in which they were moved across. because then you are legitimizing this notion of this genocide
But
that doesn't exist.
It's still up to those people to say, I'm a refugee, put your hand up and go to America.
Yeah.
And no one's picking them up and moving them without their permission. So they're consenting to it. And if they're consenting to it, they feel that way. Who are we to argue?
Well, yeah, except it sustains this idea, or the false idea, that there is this discrimination, marginalization.
Well, I don't think this government has done the best job it could
No.
to make especially white Afrikaners feel included.
Mm-hmm.
Because for 30 years, all that, and you can tell, I mean, I had this conversation with old Ernst van Zyl from AfriForum a while ago. You can tell because Afrikaans people stopped giving their children Afrikaans names at a certain point.
Mm.
There was a kind of 5-year period where Afrikaans kids were not being given Afrikaans names. I mean, that would be about as clear a sign as you can get that the parents are trying to distance themselves from their own culture, because it became like a badge of dishonor just to be an Afrikaans South African, because all the blame for apartheid was put on you posthumously or by the sins of the father. It seemed like a very unfair thing to do. There are legitimate gripes, I think. I don't think it's genocide. I've never said so.
Yeah.
And in fact, all the people who keep being accused of saying it's genocide also didn't say so. So I don't know where this came from. And there is a difference between discrimination, which is actively happening. It is actively happening. It's happening all over South Africa. If you want to start a business and you want to work with government, that's at the most basic level. You need to give half your shares in your business to someone black. You need to have a black business partner at the instance. Otherwise, you're not going to get that business. And there are things, from the TV business, from everywhere else, you need to have certain quotas in place, because that's what the government does. Now, if you're an Afrikaans farmer who's trying to sell your stuff to a big corporation in this country, it's a family business maybe. You've been running it for 4 generations. You've now grown the business. Maybe you're just on the margins. Maybe you're just making enough to make a living. You want to sell to a Woolworths, or they're going to ask for your BE certificate. Suddenly you don't have any.
Yeah.
So the government is going to top-down impose that you must just give away half of what you've done? Yeah. That's a kind of discrimination.
Yeah,
so they have
gripes.
Yeah. They have gripes. Afrikaans schools with the Bella Act. Now this expropriation without compensation thing, which is we should all be pissed off about that. And if Afrikaans people in particular are feeling put upon, they must do what everyone else has done who's emigrated. I don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to go anywhere. But if you want to go, go.
Yeah, fair enough. And you've got to have solid representation to present your argument and to remind the South African government that your contribution is essential. Your identity is essential. Your cultural values have to be sustained. You have to maintain your presence. And it has to be respected.
Well, I think that if the government in this country had done a little bit more to reach out to Afrikaans people, particularly the ones who were feeling marginalized and discriminated against, they were feeling that way. I'm not saying that I feel that way. That's how they were feeling. And they said it. The braver ones anyway. The rest just put their heads down and pretended nothing was happening until it became unbearable for them or whatever. But it goes back to this word refugee, and people seem so attached to the idea that a refugee has to be a certain thing. They've got an idea in their head of what a refugee looks like, of what a refugee's problems back home were, of what kinds of things justify them calling themselves that. There are people with serious shittiness in their past from countries like Somalia, who are here in South Africa, and they're not calling themselves refugees. We just call them illegal immigrants. And the same people who are calling them makwerekwere are the ones who have a problem with refugees who are Afrikaans going to America.
Yeah.
So you're just a bunch of hypocrites. I don't fucking buy any of it. Just stop your shit. No one's taking you seriously. Those guys are just nonsense. How would you deal with Trump? What would you do if you were the head of the delegation? You were going there. You want to try and Afrikaner refugees aside. How do you approach a guy like that?
The meeting with Trump has to be the very last photo opportunity. Really, the discussion is not happening with Trump. The discussion has to be happening with these secretaries for the economy, diplomatic relations. That's where you're presenting a solid argument. And finally, you get to Trump. You do the handshake. You try not to correct him too much because I don't think his ego manages that very well. And you just try and get him to understand that this South Africa is alive and well. We are healthy, and the perceptions of what our legislation is trying to do needs to be addressed. That's the part.
But is it the perceptions or is it the legislation itself? Because we know
perceptions often, because
we know that the property laws that have been enacted in the last 6 months, and I know you're a capitalist too.
Sometimes, yeah, not all the time.
You're not?
No, I don't think I am.
Well, then explain your position to me, because I'm curious. I might have got it wrong.
I don't see profit at all costs, because especially in the performance world that I come from.
Not unfettered plundering.
Yeah.
Not the sort of capitalism that will take anything and anyone and squeeze the lifeblood out of them for $1.
Well, exactly. And to use the analogy then in the creative sector, I'm saying, yes, you must work for profit. People must share in the profit, and you cannot earn that profit at the expense of somebody else's rights.
But when you say people must share in the profit, surely the person who takes the most risk should get the biggest share of the profit.
I agree. They should get the biggest share of the profit.
You set up a factory.
Yeah.
It costs you a lot of money. You're the one who believes this product will work. You go to the trouble selling it. That doesn't mean you have to give each of your workers the same salary you've got.
No, it doesn't mean that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
No,
You're
no,
not
no.
some kind of commie.
No,
I'm just checking.
I like the idea of people earning royalties, for example. And that's a percentage of the proceeds of whatever the movie series makes.
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
It also, it's just very difficult to police that these days. It was fine in the days where people used to have to buy a DVD or a...
Yeah.
Now, with the internet, I don't even know where half of the stuff originated. I don't know where it's HBO or Netflix or SABC or whatever. I see it on my screen. The last thing I care about is its origin.
Sure.
And it's hard then, if you don't know that, to be able to make sure that the actor gets any royalties.
But you said
or the
it
musician.
Earlier, there are any number of ways of tracking how many people are viewing something or downloading something, and that's the advantage of the technology that we have now. We have found ourselves in a position where the streamers, for example, have very conveniently forgotten how to count subscribers when it comes to the argument about how are people going to be earning royalties on the streaming platforms. And they've decided, in the US, UK, and Korea, you can, these performers on the streaming shows, you can earn royalties, but everywhere else, no, you can't have royalties. So there are double standards that the streamers apply, because in South Africa, they say, well, we can't calculate how many people watch the show. And we know that's nonsense.
Yeah, but it's still going to be small, isn't it? I mean, what are we talking about when it's royalties? Because I have appeared in ads and TV shows and things, and I don't get a fucking check. I can't even smell one. So what kind of money do people make?
You'll be making 5% that's shared amongst your principal cast, stuff like that.
No, please, they're arguing over scraps.
Yeah, but based on the actor's body of work.
This is embarrassing. This is like, okay, guys, we got rat for dinner, and there are 50 of us.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's outrageous. So that's not a model that's going to work anymore.
No, well, based on the work that you've done over years and years and years, you find those are the residuals that actually become your retirement.
But Jack,
that's what sustains you.
I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but Madonna struggles to make money out of her royalties anymore. Madonna, who wrote all those songs in the heyday, she certainly made money during the 80s and 90s. But from about 2008-9 on, I don't know that anyone has paid Madonna royalties. And if they have, it's been a fraction of what she used to earn. Yeah. She has to go, that old bitch has to get on tour to make money now. She has to put on that leotard and smack on the makeup and, tighten up those thigh muscles and get on stage, because otherwise there's no way they're going to wheel her out one day because she's so hungry for that money.
Yeah. Well,
But she's not getting royalties. So how pitiful South African actors who've been in one commercial in the last 10 years, how are they ever going to make this? And again, I know there are actor friends of mine like Shamila and others are going to be all over me after this because they know I'm... A lot of our people in the audience also are like, ugh, zero sympathy for actors, quit acting and get a real job, says Congo Chris. I mean, I'm not saying that, but they are. They're much more horrible people than me.
No, totally. And generally those are the kind of hypocrites that would also love to watch their favorite show and then say, oh, that was a lovely show, fantastic. They'll talk about it and then they'll come back with, but then that's not a real job. And I get that people don't think of acting as a real job, but then again, people don't think of academics as having a real job.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. I'm on that side of the argument. So what do you think of the GNU? Because people ask me that question all the time, and I don't have an answer. The Government of National Unity. I mean, it doesn't appear to me to be doing tremendous things, and it doesn't appear to me to be doing terrible things. So the less we hear from government, the happier I am. And apart from all these laws that they've put in place that we all think are stupid, like the NHI, the expropriation bill, the Bella Act. I mean, apart from those three, nobody's really saying that they're doing a wonderful job or that they're doing a shit job, which is perfect. Am I right?
Yeah, I think that's accurate because in South Africa, it feels as if the level of discourse that we have as political beings, it's almost reduced to, what goes on in the kind of fights you get in a playground.
Yeah.
And all you've done is that you've taken it out of, these are the separate camps, and now you've just contained all those little factional playground fights into one camp called the GNU.
Right.
So the fracture points are still there, but I think we are still handling it like a bunch of 6-year-olds, which makes me worry because that's why you feel that the relationships that should be binding people within the GNU are actually...
Some very funny comments here. GNU is just another name for a wildebeest, about the same brain power, says Durban Dope. Someone else says, got no use. GNU stands for got no use. I refuse to watch televised fiction. Nice ad hominem, though, says Congo Chris. Standard actor narcissist response. Oh, but without me, your life would suck. Actually, nothing would change for me. So it's funny. I had this discussion with a friend of mine who's an actor too, and I said, in fact, there was another friend of mine who's not an actor who stood up for actors and said, when a culture is in retreat, when a culture is in decline, one of the signs that you'll have that it's no longer working properly is that there aren't actors. Because theater, comedy, drama, music, poetry, all of those things, as much as we regard them as luxuries, if you don't have them, everything is worse by a marked degree. Like you can only really call something a civilization when it has those arts represented well within it.
It was instructive just watching the Taliban destroy cultural artifacts. It described so much for me because it reminded me that their approach to the world comes from a certain primitive understanding.
Totalitarian.
It is totalitarian.
And it is backward.
Yeah. You
blew up those Buddhas of Bamiyan, which I'm still pissed off about. I can't believe I still am. But that makes me as angry as if I saw violence against a woman on the street. I'm seriously pissed off about it.
Yeah, and we should be. There has to be a level of outrage.
Those things belong to the world. They did not belong. It was not the Taliban's right to destroy something that was thousands of years old.
Yeah, that they didn't create.
And ISIS, when they destroyed things like... there was that amazing Lepida Magnus, I think it was that in Libya. I can't remember which one. Palmyra in Syria, ISIS, Iraq. There were plenty of places there too. Ancient Babylon is there, and Susa, and places like Ur. These are some of the oldest human civilizations imaginable, and these guys decided because they believe in a certain thing, and they're around in 2018 or whenever they did it. We're just going to decide for humanity. We're going to break this thing down. Outrageous.
Yeah. And people are not always comfortable with self-reflection. and self-interrogation, being able to express yourself through artistic expression is, for me, a sign of a society that is evolving, that is careful, courageous, and cultured in appreciating their own history. So when you feel something because of something that you've learned, when you look back into your history and you realize that there was a significant moment and it helped to shape you and identify you, that becomes important in how you express your feeling towards that. And it's a sign of a refined society, which is why we don't like to to give performers, sculptors, artists, writers enough. I don't know why we don't give them enough recognition for the work that they do in helping for a culture, a nation, to appreciate and understand itself better. That it's if they don't.
Well,
can you imagine?
I'm a fan of only paying actors just enough to eat, just enough to stay alive, because no one wants a fat actor. They got to be in shape, you know.
Yeah.
Not too fat.
Create fat rolls. It's okay.
All right. Very good. Jack Devnarain is with us. It is Monday morning. We got lots of other things I want to get into in the next hour. But I'm glad we talked about this because it's your big fight at the moment, and you're doing a damn fine job of it. I think these actors are very lucky to have you, because if they had me, I would have just talked them right out of their jobs. It's like when someone says to me, "Oh, I would love to have a podcast or a radio show, be on TV," and I say to them, "Go and become a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer or something that we need. We're not lawyers. We don't need any more of those. But become a teacher or become a someone who cares for old people or something like that. Don't get into the entertainment business." That's my advice. So I'm glad it's you, not me.
Have we weaponized podcasts?
Jesus, we've got to talk about that and a whole lot more. No, because I'm very concerned. All over the world, the podcasts are popping up, and I'm thrilled at that. But some of them, it's like anything. You now have this. Anyway, let me not get into it now. We can get into it in the next hour. Don't go anywhere.
This is an artist who's been in the game, have the B.
I'm the best rapper ever. This is not a speech, no, it's the breath of an idol. With killer verses like I beat you to death with a Bible.
Phela mina ngiyinsizwa mina. Ngiyinsizwa.
Hello, Dumela, Sawabona, how's it? And welcome to another edition of the On the Bounce Show. After many entertaining matches across a variety of tournaments, we are down to the finals, the big kahunas, when it comes to football matches this season. 4 major finals, 8 big teams, all with hopes and dreams, and one special guest to bring it all together. It's ex-professional footballer Dane Clayt, joining the guys in studio to bring us up to speed on what to expect in the upcoming finals this month. Arsenal fans, perhaps catch up with us again next week. It's episode 48. It's trophy time. Let's get into it.
Well, good morning to you. It is Monday. We are joined by Jack Devnarain and by everybody in the comments section, and shit is happening there. Wow. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of noise here. I see Dirk Kutsia wants to know, is the doc not on today? So I asked James, during the break because we didn't have Dr. Hanan on this morning. We always have a psychologist on a Monday morning.
Oh, good one.
Don't you think that's a good idea,
Great
Jack?
idea.
You think we need it?
I think you need it.
Probably more than most. Yeah. So that's a thing that we meant to do on a Monday. Apparently there was a problem with James didn't figure out how to get Dr. Hanan on. I'm going to blame you, James. You and Flex, both of you. You equally share that responsibility this morning. We were talking about what Jack does now. It's pretty much your full-time job.
It feels
right?
like it, yeah.
You're representing all of these actors. Are these bastards paying you, these actors?
No.
Oh, dude.
No,
You're doing it for nothing.
This is,
What kind of a sucker are you?
free suicide, career suicide is what it is.
No, well, it's also hard work. You have to be the interlocutor between them and, the producers and the broadcasters. You are making it difficult for yourself, but
Yeah.
you should be paid for this shit.
Yeah, in an ideal world, yes, because then I would be a unionist and then I would be paid by the union.
So start a union.
See, we're going back to the first hour now.
Okay, let's leave it. I do want to move on because there are all kinds of important things we've got to get to this morning. Not that what you're doing isn't, but this is, this is Monday, so we got to catch up with all the stuff that happened over the weekend. This is kind of related. Sir Elton John has criticized the UK's government plan to allow AI companies to use artists' work without permission or payment.
Yeah.
So they're calling it criminal and a betrayal of creators. He warned it could rob young artists of their future and vowed to fight the move legally if necessary. The government rejected a House of Lords amendment demanding transparency from AI developers, prompting backlash from creatives who argue that policy favors tech giants over protecting artists' rights. So,
That's a big deal, yeah. We're going back to
Elton
that.
John's on your side.
Yeah,
That's good.
as he should be.
Yeah. I mean, you see, I also think it's like timing is everything, right? What do you think the best time to have been an actor was? The golden age of Hollywood, the 50s and 60s?
Yeah, no, I think later on. I think from the time we went into VHS, that period between the 80s and 90s, VHS to DVD, that would have been the time. That's when you were creating new copies based on new technology. Royalties then would have spiked.
Who is the most successful actor in the world now, do you think? And who's the best actor in the world, in your opinion?
I'm thinking probably successful Tom Cruise because he's producer, actor.
And he's still doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in his 60s now, and the guy is still doing Mission Impossible. I mean, what are we on?
Absolutely.
Mission Impossible 205.
Yeah, and he still runs a very mean sprint,
Yeah.
which is incredible. Fantastic. Well done to him.
He's in great shape. He
Yeah.
still looks good.
Yeah.
And the guy he's clearly making tons of money,
Yeah.
and he can command big box office numbers.
Do you remember that breakdown that he had? He was shooting something, and it
got
was
on-
during COVID.
Was it not when he jumped on Oprah's sofa and said how much he loved Katie? What's his name?
No,
Because that was a breakdown, in my opinion.
that was He should have
I thought he
apologized
was
to the world.
I thought he was so mentally fragile at that point because he was trying so hard to convince all of us that he was happily married and that he was thrilled that And Nicole Kidman's like standing just off stage, going, "Huh? What are you, insane?"
Yeah, he just was
'Cause
trying too hard. It seemed.
Look, he's clearly a crackpot. I mean, he's very big into the Scientology stuff.
Yeah.
You can see there's a ferocity in the way that he confronts his career. And he does that very, very professionally and very well. But it's almost like he's single-minded to the degree that his whole life is just these movie projects.
Yeah.
I don't think he does anything else. He certainly hasn't got like successful relationships to point to or...
Well, not many have.
No, I mean, it's hard to be the best at what you do. That's why I asked, who do you think the best is?
Yeah.
Who do you think the greatest actor is, though? Like, I've watched movies and thought, wow, it could be, actor or actress, but who do you think is...
Yeah, and look,
Who are your favorites?
it's somebody like Benedict Cumberbatch for me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. You can see the depth of classical training there, all the way into recreating performances and characters for the new age of how we make film and TV now. And there are others. Our mistake, though, is not to be trapped into the British or the Hollywood traditions of what is fine acting. We've got to look beyond that into the continent, into Asia, into India, and you discover golden talent there that's just breathtaking in its integrity, and you think we need to learn from that. And it's not just about, the Tom Cruises of the world.
Yeah, it's just, again, like Western, American culture, let's not call it Western, American culture has suffused and expanded. This is their real power. It's not just the dollar.
Right, yeah.
And you asked about the weaponization of podcasts earlier, but the weaponization of culture is probably a much more interesting discussion. And the world, even in places like China, which has done its best to not only ignore and avoid American culture, especially recently, but even they can't help it.
Well,
They can't help it. I mean, you look at how American products, American movies, American music.
you had Dennis Rodman
Everywhere.
going to visit North Korea.
North Korea, which is sealed off from the world.
Yes.
They don't even know America. They couldn't point to it on a map in North Korea.
Exactly. And you had that, Rodman, for whatever he is a cultural icon.
It's like Steven Seagal. He's in Russia, right? He's doing the same thing that Rodman did in North Korea.
Yeah.
Of course, North Korea and Russia are very different countries, and the one is not hermetically sealed off from the world. But there was a video of Steven Seagal just like doing ordinary shit in Moscow. That's where he lives now.
Oh, does he now?
Yeah, he's become like big mates with Putin, and he's totally, some people would say, sold out to Russia. Others would say that he's just a big fan of Russian culture. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting parallel between him and Dennis Rodman. And Dennis Rodman's big mates with old Kim Jong-un, right?
Yeah.
What a world. So do you listen to podcasts? Because you brought up, like, have podcasts been weaponized? I'm interested in where that goes.
Man, I realized that there were people who were trying to score points about, putting out their point of view, about their views on the industry. And I thought it was an interesting choice that you people decide to go on a certain podcast in order to score those points.
Sure.
So I was wondering, why did you choose that podcast? And, have you now satisfied your need to put out your point of view because you had that hour to sit and talk to somebody and you manipulated the agenda so that you were speaking about the thing that you needed to say? And then the response to that made me think, okay, so...
Was this a particular person you're talking about?
Yeah. There was a producer who failed to pay performers, technical crew, and service providers, and then went on to
And
lie
they tried
about
to,
it.
like, launder their name.
Yeah. And they started to accuse people like me of a smear campaign.
Oh.
And then they go on to a podcast.
So
and
who is
then-
this? Because they mentioned you, so you can mention who they are.
Yeah. I don't feel
If they
like I
tried
need
to
to
smear
mention
you,
him.
screw them, man. If they try to smear you, you can hit right back.
No, of course I could. But see, that's the thing, is that I don't feel the need to do that because
You think it's trashy?
and I think it's poor form because I presented facts.
Okay.
And I actually had...
Okay, so people go on podcasts. All right, so let's turn away from this particular example
Yeah.
because this sounds a little internecine and in the acting world for me to understand. I mean, I'm not diminishing its
No,
severity.
exactly. And if I wanted to, I would have said, hey, Gareth, listen, I want to talk about this guy.
Okay,
And I
so
don't want
podcasts can be used, especially where James and Flex, you got to listen to this. If you have producers who are easily manipulated, no, never you guys, then you are going to have people who are trying to sell something or trying to get a message across, who are
Yeah.
trying to propagandize on
Right.
behalf of whatever
Yeah.
it is they're trying to do. They will get on and they'll be able to do their thing.
Yeah.
I've always tried to sniff those people out. If they really want to just do a hard sales message, it's hardly ever a yes. But if they are prepared to pay for it and my audience will bear it,
Yeah.
and they know that we've also got to keep the lights on, right?
Sure.
So there's a kind of a delicate balance there. So if someone wants to sell lawnmowers and they are prepared to pay for editorial on this show or for a commercial or whatever it is, and the audience go, okay, well, you know what, we'll put up with that lawnmower commercial
Yeah.
because we know that's what makes the show possible. Otherwise, I'm not going to do this because I'm a Madonna sitting around waiting for royalties.
Yeah.
And there is a delicate balance between that and just being true and honest. And
Yeah.
you know, when I invited you here, and I said at the beginning of the show, we weren't just going to talk about the acting thing, but that is such an important part of what you're doing at the moment. And you've become the lone voice in some ways. I don't feel that if you wanted to suddenly promote some agenda, that would last very long.
Yeah.
I think I can tell when someone's got an agenda.
Yeah. And when you're being manipulated or your show is being manipulated.
Maybe sometimes it's happened. I'm unaware of when it has. I try to be awake to these things because, you know, there are people who take advantage. But I think there are a lot of really dumb people in podcasting who just don't have any experience and will be taken advantage of, definitely,
Yeah.
directly, and you'll be able to see it immediately.
And also because podcasting as a form of entertainment
Yeah.
has become so popular.
I mean, you know, you could always argue that if someone is like the publishers, let's say the publishers tell me there's this guy who's just written a book and he's got interesting ideas about this or that or the other, and it would be great to have him on. I know they're just trying to flog books.
Yeah.
And so does everybody who's listening. But if it creates the excuse for me to be able to have someone really amazing or interesting
Yeah.
in the studio,
Yeah.
cool, then it's great. Then that's the compromise we make.
Sure. Then it works for your show.
But how about weaponized? If it's being used, then those people who have been weaponized should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're allowing mudslinging, effectively,
Exactly.
and reputational damage to occur on their platform. And that's a dereliction of responsibility and duty on their part.
And do they have that as a podcaster?
There's no governing
Yeah.
rule in podcasting. You know, I saw the government, in fact, Kumbutso Njaveni, the same minister who we were talking about earlier, she said the other day that podcasting needs to be regulated.
She said that.
Yeah, well, I think they're just throwing a line out there. They're trying to see who would be frightened and riled and ruffled by it.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you right now, I am less afraid of a minister in this country than I am of lizards in my river. I'll put various items of my anatomy on the block that these guys who can't even keep the lights on wouldn't be able to organize a piss up in a brewery before they'd be able to organize regulation in the podcasting business. Because if you try, let me just remind you, you have the whole internet that you have to then regulate. Because this stuff will pop up somewhere else. People will find it in some new location. I could change it to a YouTube show, then it's not just a podcast. We could do anything to make it happen because by the time you've drafted laws, we've already moved 10 iterations on.
Yeah.
So it's not going to happen. And podcasting isn't just an audio file like it used to be in the beginning. You know, it was like a downloadable audio file that you would listen to. Now it's video and the clips and the social media.
Live.
So good luck taking on X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google. You're going to be very, very busy. And for a minister who clearly has quite a lot to deal with at the moment, just be a little humble.
But what kind of
by your
mind comes up
responsibilities.
with a proposition so ridiculous as to even suggest that?
Well, it's the same people who want to regulate everything. These are the same people who told us that we couldn't wear open shoes during COVID.
Yeah.
People who told us we couldn't buy at hardware stores during COVID. I mean, you remember the stupid... They're small tyrants.
Woolies
So
roast chicken.
Yeah, they're the kind of people who want to create, I don't know, difficulty for everyone else. They want to enforce and execute laws because they probably have very little control in their own life. That's the only explanation I can try and find.
Have you come across that attempt to regulate the ownership of firearms in security companies, which was a recent discussion?
Yeah. They were trying to remove pistols and other weapons from security guards.
Yeah.
Because they've suddenly realized, it's occurred to them that there are more private security guards in South Africa by a huge proportion than there are army and police officers put together.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
it's something like 2-1.
And you've got more security companies that are protecting state infrastructure
Yeah.
than
Yeah,
the state can protect
great
for
move,
itself.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is your own assets that can't be protected by the police.
Yeah.
And we have a very, very low ratio of policemen to people in this country.
Yes.
One policeman, I think it's 40,000 people in the country are served by each policeman. So we've got a tiny police force that can't possibly do.
Yeah.
Listen, a lot of them I feel very sorry for, because I think there are probably plenty of good cops who are doing the best they can. But there are also the useless cops who you see standing on the side of the road, eating a Tex bar, getting bigger and bigger in their uniform every fucking week. And they're not doing anything to do with law enforcement.
Yeah.
They're just trying to elicit bribes, getting involved in drug deals, doing all sorts of dodgy stuff. I hope they're the minority. I don't know for a fact.
Yeah. And well, at the time I left the police, I was very proud of the units that I had worked with, their
What rank
achievements,
did
their
you get to
convictions.
there?
I was a constable.
Right.
And we had a fantastic conviction rate.
Which police station?
This was down in Durban, Central. And I hoped, because at the time that I was leaving, I could see even then that politics had crept in, a lack of willingness to discipline people who are now, who were
Accountability.
accountability was a big thing. Yeah, there was a hunger to try and get higher up the rank structure. So there was serious unfettered ambition, and it went hand in hand with politics. So while that was playing out, people forgot to discipline guys in the force lower down who were getting things wrong.
You must have had some horrible experiences as policeman, because that's not a fun job, and you get to see sometimes the really ugly underbelly of society.
Yeah,
You know,
it changes
you.
you.
You
It
see
does
a lot
change.
of violence. You see a lot of real deprivation.
Yeah. Yeah, you see things that change you, and you never forget them, and you've got to try and expand your world view in order to try and understand what you're working with. One of the ways I describe it is to say that violence is a language, and there are people that you meet in this world who only speak
That's
that
their
language.
language. Yeah.
And you can only speak to them in the same language because it's the only language they understand.
I had such a debate with a friend of mine a few weekends ago, because he's one of these people who believes in that there is a possible utopia. You know, that if we just all had the same amount of stuff, that we'd all be happy. And I said to him, but what you fail to realize is, and you've articulated it so well, that some people are psychopaths and sociopaths.
Yeah.
And that they only understand that language of violence
Yeah.
and selfishness and so much worse. And that those people they're out there, and they can't be rehabilitated. They're not the sort of people who can, if I just get them a nice job or give them a house, they'll become fine.
Yeah, and if somebody can take me back to when I was 5 years old and I was treated like this by my father,
Yeah, we can't.
I
Can't
wish
fix
we could
those
help
things.
that.
There's no way to do it.
No.
It's interesting too that being a policeman in this country. I mean, when did you stop doing that?
2002.
Okay, so we're not talking years and years. We're not talking, a generation ago. But
Yeah.
there must have been people with real expertise. You were probably one of them. Some of the people who could really track down the bad guys.
Oh, yeah. Now, I was
You know?
learning from those guys.
Yeah.
I imagined myself becoming one of them. And I realized that there is... I probably could never be that, even if I wanted to, because the most effective cops that I know and you know are the guys who fall on both sides of the line. These are the guys who know how to play with the law in order to effect justice, and there's a difference between law and justice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's some things that happen in order to bring
absolutely.
justice about, which we would not necessarily call legal.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what makes them effective as cops.
Yeah. And you're dealing with the rough edges here. You're not dealing with
Absolutely.
smooth things.
Yeah, as Jack Nicholson said, it's not the kind of thing you talk about at parties.
Yeah. We need walls, son.
Yeah,
and you need men standing on those walls. You sleep by the grace of the cover I give you, or something
Yes,
like that.
and then
This
you
is from A
question the
Few Good
manner in
Men.
which I provided.
Yeah, that's right. What a great speech.
Yeah,
Yeah, that Jack Nicholson. Now, he was a great actor.
absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so would you say that policing is harder than acting?
No, think of it this way. When I was in uniform, I had to go and attend a scene, and in this scene, I had to present myself with a certain attitude and tone of voice.
Sure.
And I had to make sure that by the time I left that scene, it was different. It had changed from the time I entered it. If you transpose that into the acting world, I'm in wardrobe. I go into the start of a scene, I say something, there's a dialogue, and then it changes by the time I leave, and the story has moved on.
Right.
So for me, it's always performance.
Why do you actors always love playing the villain?
There are fewer rules. Villains subscribe to fewer social constructs than good, decent people do.
Oh. Even the complex ones.
Yeah. The complex ones, even the good, decent, complex people are just like the cops that we spoke about. They understand the darkness within them.
All right, this is good. Jack Devnarain is with us, and we're talking about all kinds of stuff. I just want to quickly go to the comments here. There's lots of other people. 20 years is a lot, GC. He's closer to being a doorman than he was to the SAPS. You know, Dirk, that's very, very unkind. You also have to be violent at some point. That's Mapelo. I think he's talking about being a cop.
Yeah.
You have to be violent at some point.
Yeah, you can't
Nothing
be
like a
good guy.
5-year stint as a policeman in the apartheid era to put the world and SA in perspective, says Durban Dope. So I'm assuming that you, Durban Dope, did that. I don't know. Is that what you're telling me? You can handle the truth, says Congo Chris.
Yes.
Villains often have strong motivations, which are very relatable.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be driven by those 4 things. Which
Exactly.
I was talking about earlier. Power, money, pleasure, fame.
And they're quite raw. The thing is with a villain is that you immediately identify what's driving him. So you know exactly what it is,
Yeah.
which one of the 4.
Yeah, I think that so many of these villains in movies today, though, it's so like low level. I mean, you know, Thanos just wants to make the world the universe less populated. I
Yeah.
mean, what kind of motivation is that? Like, what is the universe too full?
Yeah. Yeah. That's quite infantile.
That's a stupid motivation.
Yeah.
And all these guys are, I just want to kill Spider-Man. You're like, come on, dude. You got to have more than that.
Give me more than that.
I could understand if you were pursuing a woman. Let's say you were in love, the love of your life. You were trying to bring someone back from the dead, or you were trying to take over the galaxy. That I understand. Those are reasonable motivations. But just to kill Spider-Man? Do me a favor. Don't you think that these superhero movies now have just become so predictable?
Yeah, I think the Marvel universe, all those things, I think they've tired themselves out. I think
I feel like
audiences have outgrown that sort of stuff now, and I think people are looking for something a little bit more intellectually engaging.
Yeah, they don't even try.
No.
In fact, they rehash the same story
Yeah.
over and over again. You can almost start the movie and predict the end of it within 5 minutes.
Yeah. Hey, have you been to Comic-Con?
No, tell me
I
about
asked
that.
James about it earlier. He says he went last year.
Who said they were at Comic-Con the other day and that they met somebody there and like, was it Mash? Yeah, Mash went there. He dressed up and everything. You went.
I went, yeah, and I was talking there about AI.
Did you dress up?
No, I was going to...
Oh, come on, Jack.
What?
We were gonna get all excited about your outfit that you
What
were
am I
gonna wear.
going to look like?
I don't know. I've never been to Comic-Con. I don't know what I would wear.
No, man.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
well, I suppose, yeah, if I was going to give it some thought, it'll be some obscure character. Then people will be forced to ask me, who are you?
Well, before you move on to talking about Comic-Con, what role would you really have liked? Out of all the movies you've ever seen, which role would you like to have played the most? You go over the lines in your head. You can't help yourself. You're into it.
Yeah. I think it would be one of those military or cop stories, because the language has become intuitive to me now, and I know the characters so well, and I've done a few cop roles in my time while I was still a serving policeman and after I left the police, and whenever I go back into that world, it just feels like putting on an old coat that still fits just perfect. And the language comes back, and the attitude and the shiftiness and the hyper awareness and all of that becomes just part of me again.
Yeah, we need Judge Dreads in life more, says Siler. Maybe.
You have been judged.
99% of us play the good guy in our daily lives. It must be awesome to just let loose and not care about what happens. That's maybe why people like doing the villain role.
Yeah. And of course, I learned from the best. Remember Robert Whitehead, who played Barker Haynes on Isidingo.
Shame, when did he die? Like recently?
Dog, he's still alive.
Oh, see?
Yeah.
See how little I know about what's going on at the moment. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to dead name him. Of course I remember Barker Haynes, the character. Why did I think he was? Who died recently?
No, there've been a
well
few deaths. Sadly, there've been.
You
Michelle
rattled them
Boertes.
off the other day. Michelle Boertes. She was special. Huh?
Yeah, man. And
we should play it. You know what we should do, James? We should have a game next week where we play Dead or Alive. We get a whole bunch of celebrities that we haven't heard from in a long time, and then we guess in the studio which ones are alive and which ones are dead.
Or have them in studio and ask them, are you dead or alive?
Yeah, are you dead?
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize, Robert Whitehead. I had no idea. So he's still going strong.
An absolute darling. Yeah, of course, he doesn't work a lot. And that, for me, is one of the things that keeps driving my activism. I hate the fact that he's worked for 50 years and he should be earning a residual income.
Yeah.
And he isn't.
Oh.
And that's wrong.
A great actor.
Super actor. Yeah.
All right, so you brought up Comic-Con. Why did you bring that up?
I just thought you might look good in a Betty Boop kind of.
Yeah, sure.
thing.
Yeah, that would be me. No, I don't go, and I'm the opposite of an activist here. I'll speak my mind on the show. Thank God I got my own show, because if I always get asked to go on other people's shows, and I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I come in here, we do this 3 times a week. That's good enough. You want to hear what I think? There's going to be somewhere in the last 10 years, tens of thousands of hours that you'll find out what I think about pretty much everything.
Yeah.
But I'm not an activist. I would never go on a protest.
Okay.
I would never describe myself as an activist, write an article about something. Oh, I'm thinking of, Jamie Barker. That's right. No, Barker Haynes was...
Yeah.
Yeah, Barker Haynes is Robert Whitehead.
Yes.
Thanks, James. We really needed that.
Yeah, but that's another one, another loss.
Great
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, what James wouldn't be a great loss.
Is he going to come back out here and tell us another
useful
actor
fact?
Yeah.
He's gonna update us. He's got a clock in his office with dying actors.
Yeah.
So
Here's
keep us
another one,
updated.
guys.
Yeah. Who else is dead, James? In fact, we want 4 more names before the end of the show. All right. I know.
Fair enough.
Flex, if you want to add any dead actors, feel free. We could always do with more, you know? In fact, the more dead actors, the more money for the living ones. That's what Jack
I'm not
says.
sure that's a formula.
No, definitely not the formula.
Comic-Con.
I'm not an activist. So this is what you're going to I mean, this is going to be a legacy project for you. You're going to have to hand it over to someone else at some point, and it's an ongoing battle. It's not like it's going to be one.
You know what really worries me, though, is that just recently we were sitting with some very senior officials from the Department of Employment and Labour, which is actually where the conversation sits, not with Gate and McKinsey.
Not at Arts and Culture.
Not at all.
Right.
Because this is a question about the actor's status as
Who's the minister
freelancer.
there at the moment? I don't know, because they change them all the time. Oh, Nkosazana Meth.
Yeah.
Meth, that's not a great surname for a minister.
I'm
I'm going to say it. You don't have to say anything. You're busy negotiating with them. Meth is not a great surname.
Meth is a great side. It depends what you want to add to it.
Well, methylated spirits is not a great place to go. And
just so rude.
methamphetamines is not a great place to go. So I don't know what other kind of meth we were maybe thinking of. Methane, also not great. So I'm just going to say complicated surname. Anyway, how's that negotiation going with the Department of Labor?
It's worryingly not going anywhere because we were sitting with these senior officials and we couldn't get those officials to understand the difference between a freelancer and an employee. And a good example of that is when they suggested to us, but why don't you guys just go on strike then?
Yeah.
And we said, but we can't.
You can't go on strike.
This is exactly what the Labor Relations Act gives us. The LRA allows you the protection under labor law to create a union and to engage in all those other wonderful things like industrial action and collective bargaining.
Yeah. Listen, like I said earlier, I'm not an activist and I certainly would never join a protest. I never even got close to it when there were those legit protests against, Jacob Zuma, and things were looking particularly dire at some point. I still thought, there's no way you're going to find me on the street with a sign.
Yeah.
But you have to get out there. So how are you guys going to, and I'm not just talking about acting now, but all the other stuff that you care about so much. What gets you across the line that you actually decide I'm going to go and stand in a crowd and make a noise?
Well, what really attracts me to activism is the prospect that I might actually be the only one standing there.
Really?
Yeah.
That could be exciting. We're the only one with a sign, like in the meme with the guy holding up the sign,
That's going to be me on Wednesday, by the way.
What are you doing on Wednesday?
I'm going to be at the Constitutional Court because
That's
Cyril,
quite a big deal.
Oh, yeah. And I love the fact that we can do this in South Africa.
All right.
Cyril refused to sign the Copyright Amendment Bill, which gives us a reform of copyright protection.
Oh.
And our law from 1978 has simply never been revised.
So what does this law entail and why should we care about it?
Firstly, for actors, it gives us the right to earn royalties. Secondly, it gives certain exceptions to copyright protection for people with disabilities, blind people.
What, if you're blind or you're disabled, they just take away your copyright?
No, it allows you to turn something into Braille without needing to go and pay additional fees.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
So Cyril refused to sign that bill into law because you must know the publishing houses all up in the global north make a lot of money by price gouging in South Africa.
You must phone Elton John.
Yes.
Because he'll come.
Yeah. Or as I say, Elton.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He'll fly down here.
Yeah.
I mean, he's grouchy and grumpy as hell now. So he'll be ready to take this one on.
Yeah.
Obviously, if anybody has... You see, this is something that maybe we should get into just a little bit because we got some time here. The creative product of a creative mind, that has value.
Yes.
Right. And the performance of that creativity in the actual writing or the painting or the drawing or the sculpting or the acting, it does have inherent value. I'm the first one to say, well, actors just pretend. And I take the piss. We've had this argument before.
Yeah.
But in all the creative arts and in all creative processes, we want to attribute the value back to the artist because they've put the effort in.
Yeah.
You can tell when you've got something that's been crafted. There's this huge argument going on at the moment because China produces so much of what the world regards as mass-produced cheap products.
Yeah.
But they also make some of the very beautiful, artistic, dramatic creations that are marketed in other countries as being, fine Italian craftsmanship.
Oh, yeah.
You've seen this video going around at the moment of the dude who explains that when a label says made in Italy, according to EU rules, all that has to be done is the last stage in the development of that article needs to be completed in Italy. So, for example, a Gucci bag, which is actually made in China, almost all of them are.
Yeah.
They put the final zip on or whatever in Italy, and then it's considered this is a genuine as opposed to the Hong Kong version.
Yes.
But actually, they're both made in China.
Yeah.
So how do we get past this to the point where we can actually give credit to the real creators, and so that they can make the money for the craftsmanship that they're responsible for.
Yeah, it's a good example because the designer ultimately would be earning what's due to them. The place of manufacture shouldn't really have to matter. In fact, I had this conversation with Yvonne Shaka Shaka.
Oh, yeah?
She released a wonderful new range of kitchenware with authentic African designs.
Yeah.
And it was presented
She's
up on
such a powerhouse, that woman, eh?
and so gracious.
Yeah, I love her. So she's my other mother.
Yeah.
She kind of semi-adopted me for a little while. So I've grown up with her other 4 boys in terms of being one of her children. That's
Yeah.
what she says anyway. I don't claim it because who am I to claim this? But Machaka said to me years ago that it's not enough for her to just be a singer.
Yeah.
I mean, she's been a businesswoman. She's been involved in all kinds of companies successfully.
Oh, yeah.
And now you tell me she's launched a range of kitchenware?
Yeah, that's right.
I feel like I haven't been paying attention. That's amazing.
Or that
Good
you're
for
no
her.
longer one of her 4 sons.
Maybe she's given me up. Maybe I'm an orphan.
But I did tease her, though, because the entire write-up, the presentation, all the designs and all that was saying proudly African, authentic African designs. And with all of that, right at the bottom was a sticker that said, "Made in China."
Oh,
So I took a picture of this and I posted it and I sent it put it out on social media, and I was teasing. I was being naughty, yeah. And I said, how authentic is it if it has to be made in China? And of course, typical Yvonne, so gracious and taking the joke as well, she said, it is the only way that you're going to make it at a reasonable cost, and so that your design
she's
and your
right.
product
And people
has
want
profit.
cheap stuff. They don't want expensive stuff.
No, you try and make the same thing in Africa, and it's just not going to happen in the way that you want it to.
Probably there'll be inconsistencies and all the rest of it. Listen, the Chinese are very good at what they do.
Yeah?
They really are. That's why they're the world's manufacturing hub. And India are hot on their heels, eh?
That's right. Also, going back to the Trump discussion, Trump knows it as well, which is why this reshoring idea and the Trump tariff thing is such
It's nonsense.
craziness.
But I don't think it was his. Maybe he's been smarter than we think he is, because there's a truce with China over this tariff thing. You've seen that.
Well, it didn't have to go there, did it?
But sometimes what you do is you choose an extreme position so that everything short of that extreme position seems reasonable. I mean, he wrote this book called The Art of the Deal, and
Yes.
I haven't read it. Maybe I should. Maybe we all should, because he's not hiding the ball. This is how he's always been. There were episodes of The Apprentice where he did. I watched 1 or 2 of them, where he did the most incredible things, and I thought, you know what, this guy does know what he's talking about. We all just dismiss him as this orange fool. I don't. I mean, a lot of people do. They dismiss him as being all kinds of things. The media have labeled him in a number of different ways. Probably a lot of the things are not deserved. Certainly, he has been attacked in more ways than almost any other politician in world history by his own country's media. I don't know that there's been anyone who's had to put up with as much of this as he has.
I don't think anyone has deserved it as much.
Maybe. I'm certainly not saying he's perfect. Nobody is. But the guy seems to have a knack for reading the room in a way that very few other politicians have ever demonstrated. He seems to understand America has had enough of this and they want some of that. And he seems to understand that when you're dealing with China, you first frighten the bejesus out of them by saying we're going to put 125% tariffs on you. They shit themselves, and then you bring them back to a much more reasonable position and they think they've had a good deal. This is an old negotiating tactic.
I think you may be justifying something that was a complete failure. For
and you
example,
think he's trying to save face.
I think, well, he has to try and save face because it's going to cost his economy. The lie
Maybe.
or the absolute ignorance of saying we're going to impose this tariff on China and China's going to pay for it. There's a very simple principle that, the tariff is paid by the company that imports.
Well, the
goods.
consumer eventually pays.
That's right. So that has to be
So
passed on
he's
to
punishing
the
his
consumer.
own consumers in his own country.
That's correct.
Sure.
So to come out and say that China's going to pay the tariff.
But they haven't actually, I mean, they've now declared a truce. I saw India have decided they're going to do 0. It's going to be 0-0 between America and India now.
That's fair enough.
So maybe, just maybe, like I don't want to give credit where it isn't due, but in this case, it does appear that in some places it really is working. He's getting what the best deal for America is. And in places like Europe where, if you try to sell an American car there, someone explained this very well on the show the other day to me. If you want to sell an American car in Europe, they smack like 10 to 20% tariffs on you. And now he's saying, that's not fair. You're treating us very badly. And now he's getting some kind of equilibrium brought back to the system.
If you were a deal maker and you discovered that there was a way to achieve equilibrium, I don't think the way to go about it is to go to 145% and come back down to 50% because you've advanced nothing. You've gone into a territory
Jack, I
that
don't know. It seems like
you didn't need to go.
It seems like if you're going to ask me about deal making, I'm going to say Trump has a pretty good record on there.
And if I asked you, would China end up paying the tariff? You would say?
Probably not.
Yes, exactly. So why say it?
Probably not. But you also got to remember, like China is not. They don't have a history of reacting immediately to things. They play a long game.
Yeah.
And maybe he's factored that in. Maybe that's... What the hell's that? James, who's talking to me? Someone just said GPS signal lost. Who? Who's lost? Help them. Find them, James. Sorry, these are the kinds of things that happen on the show because it's live and we wouldn't edit them out. Did you hear that?
I heard it, yeah. That can't be my phone. Mine's
Is
on
it your
silent.
phone?
No.
Talk to your Siri. Let's see.
I don't have a Siri.
Oh, well, that was
Yeah.
Siri. Was that your Waze, maybe?
No.
Not mine. Mine's right here, and she's not confused or lost.
Okay.
James, was it yours? Oh, it's Flex. It's your phone. Jesus, where were... Oh, yeah, so China.
Yeah.
I think we're in a fascinating place right now in terms of world trade because things are kind of disheveled and people are unhappy and it's not working properly. And there's a lot of people feeling that they're hard done by. And nations have not demonstrated the best ability to marshal a free market to its maximum capacity.
Which is why G20 is going to be really interesting.
If the US come. Otherwise, it's not going to be interesting.
Well, will the conversation happen without the US?
Yeah, it can.
Yeah.
But nobody's going to care.
I would see. That's why it's interesting to me because I'm convinced that there are still conversations to be had, particularly when people can see, and they've already said, we no longer trust the US as an ally. We no longer want to.
But
to
they're not
use...
saying that. I think most leaders are so pragmatic that they deal with whatever comes at them. Especially people like Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
That guy he's a pragmatist.
Yeah,
He's
and
not
real diplomat.
ideologically captured. What he wants is to make China as prosperous as possible. He realizes he's got to keep growth going.
Yeah.
And in order to keep growth going, he needs partners.
Yeah.
He needs trading partners in the world. He needs strategic partners in the world. And that's the whole story of China during his premiership. I don't think he's particularly interested in sitting and going, oh, well, America, let's try and shiv them because it'll help us. If it actually would, perhaps he'd do that. But I think he sees them as the largest trading partner he's got.
That's right.
And I think he can make it work.
And that's a smart way of
And
doing
so
it.
Trump is pragmatic. Even if you were right and you said he's trying to save face, which is not an impossibility. Let's just for a second abandon any connection to what we know or don't know about Trump. Maybe he made a terrible fuck up there. And he's now looking at this trade tariff thing and saying, oh my God, it's going to cost me my midterm election results with the Republicans losing and then I'm a lame duck. If that's why, then he's a pragmatist. Again, he's not bound to ideology.
Yeah.
And if he's a pragmatist and Xi's a pragmatist and They, them as a pragmatist. That's what it sounded like for a second.
You're trying to pronoun your way through this.
No, because he is, she is, Z is. Who the fuck knows how many of these pronouns we're going to have to use? But if they're all pragmatists, then cool. They'll figure out a way to make it work because they both need to keep quite contentious situations at home under control.
Yeah.
If Xi Jinping loses control of the Chinese feeling that things are tending towards prosperity, and you've got lots and lots of people who are working very hard in China, way harder than they are in any other part of the world probably. If they aren't getting bang for their buck and their economy starts to slide backwards, you're going to have 1 billion people who are going to be fomenting something close to revolution in a very short time.
Yeah.
He knows that. It's an unstable situation to try and keep stable. And I think Trump knows that, he didn't win by such a landslide that it's going to be easy pickings for him for the rest of his term.
No, and there are like district town halls and things that are being held now where people are feeling that they are being silenced. You've seen the arrests and things like that coming out of some of these town halls with local politicians. People are being dragged out of...
Don't know anything about it.
Oh, yeah. No, it's definitely out there on social media. What was interesting to me was a discussion that was going on with South Africa's place in BRICS, where the discussion was...
Do you think BRICS is even a thing?
I think it is a thing, yeah. And especially now, because people are looking at how do we create an alternative system, and there is this move towards a separate financing system apart from SWIFT that they want to now create, and it's going to be blockchain based, and that's in development, and I think it's been announced by BRICS, and that was a big thing. What was disturbing to me was a discussion that South Africa, instead of creating economic deals, economic ties and trade deals with its BRICS partners, instead was looking for political clout more than trade relations. That for me was disturbing.
Yeah, but obviously because we've got a government here who has... Our government in this country has squandered all the moral capital and the political reputational stuff that they might have had.
Yeah.
When Mandela and even Mbeki were around. We had a lot of clout.
Yeah.
We don't have that anymore. We're not a serious contender. In the BRICS group, they sometimes just leave the S off because we're not a major player. The rest of them don't need us. Brazil's economy is monstrous compared to ours.
We could have been a contender.
We could have been a contender. China and India, they really don't need us.
Not at all.
I mean,
not at all.
We may have certain strategic value. Even to the US, we might have some strategic value. We occupy this unique geographical position in the world. But we're tiny. I saw a chart yesterday of GDP in the world. Africa makes up, I think, 2%. All of Africa makes up 2% of the world's gross global product. 2%. And of that, South Africa isn't even the biggest one anymore.
Yeah.
We've been eclipsed by Nigeria and Egypt.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's embarrassing. We used to be the big heavyweight contender in this continent, right? And we were the country that if you wanted to launch a product into Africa, which is a massive market.
Yeah.
We got a huge market of consumers in Africa that are untapped, unsaturated. It's massive. This is, to anyone, represents a major economic opportunity. And I think anyone who isn't paying attention to the fact that Africa has also got the youngest population and we're a growing population is not really focused on the future. They probably won't be able to sell any more in the places they're already selling. This is the place to come to. But we've lost the imprimatur of being at the leading edge of that here in South Africa. And that's a pity to me.
Absolutely.
So when we go around with our begging bowl, which I don't know whether that's part of the reason they're all in America this week, all these ministers and Cyril.
Yeah, probably.
Probably also going to go around with the begging bowl. But, Russia and China and India, they don't need us. We need them.
Yeah. And as a developing economy, you don't just turn it around in 10 or 15 years.
Hell no. But we could have started 10 years ago
Yes.
and look where we'd be.
Yes, that is the point.
Instead of having stupid rules, and you talk about the Department of Labor, I certainly don't want to jeopardize anything that you're doing with them at the moment. But our labor laws in this country are a disaster. They are certainly not for actors in this case, but employment laws in this country are onerous.
Yeah.
There is so much red tape.
Yeah.
Starting a business is impossible. That's not so much just the Department of Labor. It's the Department of
Trade, industry, and
Finance,
competition.
Trade and Industry. They make it very, very difficult. You have to keep filling in forms. You have to go through endless amounts of red tape.
Yeah.
You have to wait for years and years to get things like you talk about copyrights and patents and, registrations of companies.
Yeah.
Trademarks are impossible to get registered within a year, 2 years sometimes.
Sure.
So they've got to sort out all of that shit so that we can do business. And if they had started doing that 10 years ago, we'd now be in a position where we could truly capitalize on that.
Just
and
in
we
the
might
last-
even be able to go up to a Russia or a China or an India and say, hey, we could be a useful partner to you.
Yeah, yeah. One of the advantages, and it's a common feature amongst most film producing nations, is that you have a film incentive rebate. So that
Oh, yeah?
whether you're a local producer or an international producer, you come to the country and you say, I've got 60% of people working on this show are local hire. With
sounds like quotas to me.
No, but it's a useful thing. So,
So if I were making a movie, I wouldn't give a shit about any of that. Do you ever put yourself in the producer's pants?
yes.
Shoes?
Yeah. And that's why producers
Because-
say, because the rebate gives you up to 40%
So that's the
of that
benefit.
spend. That's the benefit.
Yeah. No, sure. You make it economically attractive to them.
That's the point.
Didn't we do something like that in Cape Town for a while, where it was very cheap to make movies here?
Yeah. And that's because of the incentive rebate.
And the rand-dollar exchange.
Absolutely.
Sure. So it made perfect sense. Now that, to me, as a producer, would be exactly what I would want to be
Absolutely.
making.
And because of poor administration and incompetence, we have just lost our film incentive rebate. Because the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, as they said, oversubscribed the number of requests or applications that they got. They can no longer sustain it, so the entire thing has been canned until they know what to do with it, which means more money from Treasury and all of that.
I'm going to go back to what you very wisely said earlier, and we're going to end on this note because it's already 8 o'clock, believe it or not. I know. Feels
I was
like
getting
5
warmed
minutes.
up, Gareth. Come
I know.
on.
Where did you say you're going on Thursday? You're going to be up early again?
I'm going to be, there's a TV show that I need to be on Thursday. But Wednesday, Concourt,
You're going to be protesting solo.
I think so. Yes.
Well, you know what? You go with our blessing.
Thank you.
Strength to you because you deserve it. This fight that you're on, this war path that you're beating.
Yeah.
I have tremendous respect for you. I think you're the only brave voice who stands up for these actors. But I do want to finish with this quickly. Carl dos Santos says, and it relates to something you said earlier, the economic problems we face are not complicated. He says he could get us to 5% growth within 18 months. And I think those are not unattainable goals.
Yeah.
But we need better, more sophisticated thinkers, to go to
Yeah.
your point from
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
We don't have smart people in charge. If you have smart people in charge, these things can be achieved very quickly.
I agree.
But politics is like a popularity contest. And sometimes the dumb rugby jock wins, and sometimes the prettiest girl in the class wins, and sometimes someone wins just by promising you free stuff. And that's why we end up with shit in the trough.
Populism in democracy.
Yeah.
That's what it gives you.
It's an ongoing and very complicated thing. But I'm
Yeah.
thrilled to have a conversation with you about all of this stuff. And
I love
we've
the.
had fun
Thank
this
you. And
morning.
thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me again
Yeah.
after so many years.
You say it's years. I think I'm telling you it's like a couple of months, Jack. All right. Thanks, everybody. That's all we got time for this morning. I hope you had a good start to your day and your week, and we will catch up on Wednesday. Ciao.